Childgrave by Ken Grenhall, a book I just finished, and I read another one of Ken's books because I was completely blown away by his work titled Hellhound, which I did a review for that you can check this card if you would like to see it. If you have seen it, you know how I felt about it. I gave it a 9 out of 10. So much about it was great. I mean, his skill for writing, the way he got inside the head of a dog and told a very weird, compelling story in a small neighborhood with only a small cast of characters. And he does something similar in the novel Childgrave, which I am about to talk about right now. All right, the hook. What is Childgrave about? Well, it is about a man named Jonathan Brewster, and it is written in first person, so you get a very intimate look at his life, and his voice is very clear in the writing. And he has an agent named Harry Brewster, and this guy is a character. And you know what? I'm not going to get into that right now. I'll talk about it when the characters. But anyway, we have Jonathan. He's a photographer. He lost his wife. He has a daughter named Joanne. He becomes completely infatuated with a musician named Sarah. And that infatuation leads to a strange, dark tale that the only way I can really describe it as a slow burn. The genre is horror. It's not a gore fest. It's a different kind of horror. It's more psychological, one in which you get to get inside the head of the character and witness him. Well, I don't want to spoil anything. So let's move on. What did I think? You know, I like to start with character, so let's start there. This is probably the highlight of the novel, and Mr. Greenhall is a master at character work. Jonathan is it's a fully fleshed out being, as is his daughter Joanne, as is the woman who helps him raise his daughter since his wife is gone, Nanny Joy, as is Harry, his agent. They are quite the pair. Harry is like this 40-year-old virgin, basically. Literally. He's a 40-year-old virgin. And there's some mention of him like not really going through puberty or something, and it's just like he's this very soft, effeminate man, but he's a great counterpoint to who Jonathan is. And Jonathan, I feel, is a bit more reserved, and you see him come out of his shell throughout the course of the novel. And there's just so many great elements with character in this story. And there's a room in Jonathan's house called like the Anything Goes room, and it's this room where his daughter goes in and just throws paint on the walls and draws on the walls and just basically anything goes. And that is just one example of how Ken Grenhall has really made this world come to life in unique ways. And I think that's really what makes things feel like they're alive, is that they're unique. They don't feel generic. And as odd as they get, they feel real. Like I said, the characters in general are just masterfully portrayed. Everyone has a unique voice, every single one, even characters who are not in the novel that long. Like Harry, his agent, marries a woman down the road, and there's just a great exchange there between how they met and then how they grow to love each other. And it's just so entertaining to read and believable. And the character work really is the highest point of this novel. So let's get on to the plot. So as I mentioned in what is this book about? What is the hook? It is about this man who becomes infatuated with a woman trying to kind of find a replacement for his dead wife. But we find something interesting. Sarah is her name, and she's not particularly attractive, but he's somehow drawn to her. She plays harp in an orchestra, and he goes to see her and is just even more infatuated. And his daughter meets her, and they kind of start a relationship, and he thinks, hey, I got this. She's going to be mine. And then she becomes somewhat distant, and you wonder why. And then there's this odd thing that happens to him while he's taking portraits. He's noticing these ghostly figures that are appearing in these portraits. And, you know, Harry's agent just sees this as a great opportunity to make money and revitalize his career as a photographer. But that is only the beginning of the weird stuff. Now, from a pacing standpoint, I was hooked immediately. Like I said, from the very first line, I was drawn into this world. I was drawn to these characters, and I had a great time. And it was really reminiscent of how I felt when I read Hellhound. Now, there is a bit of a slump here. And I don't want to say it's a slow burn that feels rewarding and it's just this building dread over page after page after page. While the writing is great, Ken Grenhall is a great writer and he's completely underrated and he's writing things that are more or less in the horror genre, but I'm going to end up reading all of his books to see how they all compare. The middle of the book is a bit of a slog. Now, toward the end, I believe there is a payoff. I can't quite say that the ending was completely cathartic or it's something that had a real resonance to, but I felt like it worked. It just took a long time to get there, and I feel like you have to get about 60% into the novel before things really start to go in that direction, start heading toward where you know this story needs to go, and just it picks up at that point. I think one other element that was somewhat disappointing to me was our protagonist, Jonathan. His infatuation with Sarah kind of goes to absurd lengths. Well, not kind of, it does go to absurd lengths. And I think that some of the decisions he makes in the novel, particularly later on, feel like those of someone who has gone kind of mad. And if he did go mad, I didn't really get that from the writing. He more or less seemed the same throughout. I mean, he did get more infatuated with this woman as the novel progressed, but not to the point of madness. At least I didn't get that out of it. And then these decisions he makes that could be attributed to a madman feel off and rushed and just out of character for him, with no real breadcrumb trail to sort of lead you to come to that conclusion. Now, I guess we'll get into the writing itself, the cinematography, as I like to call it, of a novel. How does this flow? Well, as I said, it's written in first person. So you get a very close look at our protagonist. And despite the fact that we are in first person, every voice, as I mentioned, is so distinct. And I think this is a great novel to learn from if you're a writer, because it really shows you how to make characters sound different. When I talk to editors and when they've read my early stuff and even stuff now, sometimes they'll tell me, oh, this character sounds like that character. And sometimes it's really hard to understand what they mean because we all use the same words more or less. We don't want to become caricatures. We don't want to make our characters caricatures. We want them to feel real and just full of life, but also different. And it's really hard to explain that. And I think this would be a great novel if you're curious in learning about how to make a character distinct. But as Ken writes, he's a great writer. He has an interesting story. I don't want to go into it, but I feel like you should check him out online. He's no longer with us, sadly, and he has a very small collection of works, but that makes it that much easier for me to just dive in deep and read everything. He started writing later in life, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of cool when you see somebody who has a certain vocation and then they switch to another one later in life and they just become a master at it. The writing flows, it's clear, it's concise, it's colorful, it's all of those things. It doesn't feel like a slog in terms of the line to line work. Now, I know I did say back in the plot that the plot itself feels a little bit unbalanced, like it comes in hard and then it kind of just drifts for a long time before it finds itself. But I don't want you to think that that's a reflection on the actual writing itself. I was always engaged with it, even though I was kind of hoping that the plot would bring a little bit more. Now for the final thing, should you read it? Well, I've explained a lot of things to you and more or less how I feel about it in as much detail as I can get into without spoiling it. But if you're looking for something that is going to be fast-paced, more in the thriller horror genre, this isn't it. This is another tale of a few characters together. It's a slow burn. It's a character study. It's one that some strange things happen, and it's not very action oriented. Now it does have a certain payoff toward the end that does culminate into something that I think we've seen before, but it still was interesting to me in the execution. So if you're okay with being patient, I think that I can highly recommend this one, despite some of its shortcomings. All right, with all that said, I'm going to have to give Childgrave a 6.5 out of 10. It was masterfully written on a line-to-line level. It was masterfully written from a character standpoint. It just didn't hit me hard enough with the plot. It felt like it could have been cut by about 30%, I'd say. And I think that would have yielded a much tighter read, a much more powerful story, and just make the whole thing feel cohesive like Hellhound did. So while this isn't my favorite of his works, and I've only read two now, Hellhound I gave a 9 out of 10. This I'm giving a 6.5. I still think it's worth a read. I think it's not a terribly long novel, and I think there's a lot to be gleaned from it, especially if you are a writer or interested in storytelling that is very character focused, which I am. I'll still keep coming back to this, and Hellhound as well as just shining examples of how to write character. So I hope you liked the review, and if you'd like to see me create and not just critique, please check out my series Worth 1,000 Words, where I write a 1,000 word short story on the spot, no outline, from a piece of artwork. And if you'd like to support the channel, please feed that algorithm with a thumbs up if you like this video, and comment down below. Tell me what you're reading. Have you read this book? What are some favorite things you like about your books? Like, are you more into character? Are you more into plot? What are some of your favorite authors? I'm always looking for recommendations. And I also wrote a book, so you can grab it on Amazon or any platform books are sold. The link will be down in the description. It is completely free, but any reviews and downloads are much appreciated. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.